Hello everybody and welcome to the stream. Tonight it is Wednesday, so we are obviously recording a private citizen podcast. Tonight I'm going to be talking about FLoC, Google's Federated Learning of Cohorts. Does it count as you being early today? No. Hi Astral, how are you doing? No, it doesn't. I had planned to do this at 1800. My whole schedule is falling apart. There looks to be some important work coming up next week. I don't know what. I probably won't be streaming for a while. Oh, that is actually something I need to put in the show notes. I didn't do that. Okay, so let's do this now. We need to put here mention next week's episode. Timing of obviously change that later for the notes, but yeah. So I will be I don't know. I will do an episode next week. Probably won't come out on Wednesday. And I might not even live stream it. I might not have. I might have to produce it like in chunks or something. I don't know yet. Just so you know, and there probably won't be any streams for a while. But we are here. We're gonna do this now. And so I'm late. Everybody, once again, disclaimer: I'm recording podcasts, so I'm not gonna be as active as I usually are with chat. Just a message in the chat. There's for the benefit of the audio listeners. Right. Let's test everything here. Let's actually see if this works. Hello. Hello? What the fuck am I? Why is this not record? Like, what's going on? Why are you not recording? Like, what the okay, this is hello. Hello, Fadi. How are you doing? What the fuck was that? Was I just zoomed out so much? Like, what the hell's going on here? Hello. Why? Oh God. Okay, so switching OBS to that other audio source apparently fucked that up. Okay. Give me a second here. Need to play around with OBS a little bit now. There's always something, with audio. There's always something. Okay, that doesn't work. So I'm guessing we want voice meter input value for this, and then we want to set this to. Oh my God! Why is this not an audio source? Oh, wait. No. Oh God. Why is this not a thing now? Okay, sorry everybody. I'm having some technical issues. Yeah, when people complain about Pulse Audio on the next way, I learned, I can tell you this much. I learned that audio is a fucking pain in the ass everywhere. It's a pain in the ass on the Mac as well. If you watch people trying to do things on it. Okay, now Azio's back, right? So now you will have, so I'm fading like the audio on my machine, but you won't have that. So during the intro, the music here will stay at the same level. If I fade this here, it fades it for me, but it doesn't fade it in OBS. I'll have to figure it out for next time, but there's nothing really I can do about that now. Right, I'm guessing that was why I was having recording troubles. No, it's not. Apparently. What the fuck? Okay, maybe I just need to restart Hindenburg. Hello? Hello? What is going on? Oh God. See, this is why you're watching the live stream, so you can see me. This is the special content. You can see me struggle around. Okay, so that's like recording. Why is that recording? And why is... oh, wait. So it was not actually... Let me actually try something. Let's set it back in OBS. Let's do a little experimentation here for science. Okay, let's set that back to this. So that should mean you should be able to hear this, but you don't. That is damn weird. Oh no, that's not weird. That's because we need to set this to that. And then, yeah, now we're hearing this. And I can also fade this. Yes, okay. That works. Right. Let's fire up Hindenburg again. Alright. Because it really shouldn't affect this at all. Like, that should work. And that is working. Now where's my music? Yeah, no, it works. Audio, man. So you have a Hindenburg disaster. Actually, Hindenburg wasn't at fault. I'm guessing it's the Windows audio system. But yes, nice try on the pun. I have no idea why they named. I mean, they named the software Hindenburg, right? And there's two things that were historically called Hindenburg: the Vice Chancellor, you know, who's a controversial figure, and the fucking airship named after him, which exploded, i.e. the Hindenburg. I mean, maybe not name your software that. I hope the gods of podcasting will look favorably upon it. Well, they are fickle gods, let me tell you. I've got years of experience, and those are some fickle gods. Anyway, oh god, I need to, speaking of the gods of podcasting, I need to try this again so I can actually make sure that the recording is not going... Which happened to me once on this podcast. It was fucking annoying, and now I test it every time. Speaking of the gods of podcasting, I need to try this again so I can actually make sure that the recording... Right, I think we can do this. I think we can record this show. So let's do that. Let's do it right away, and let's talk about FLoC, which is somewhat horrible. Not as horrible as a lot of people are making it out to be, as far as I can tell. But it's horrible enough. It's horrible enough that we don't want it, I think. That's the TLDR. But it's obviously more complicated. Okay, let's record the show. Oh, I also learned recently that I can set markers in Hindenburg that are the things I want, the cue markers. And they're specific to the audio. So if you cut something out, the markers move with the audio, which is exactly what I needed. So I'll be using them now, if I can remember how to do it. Anyway, let's do this show. The problem is I'm using Voice Meter Potato now because I'm actually behind the scenes here. I'm doing another podcast right now while I'm working on it. And I need more flexibility, so I had to download the bigger voice meter, but it's like half my screen, which is an issue. But anyway, without further ado, let's do this crap. Let's record this podcast. Come on, here we go. You're listening to The Private Citizen, your podcast about privacy, security, civil rights, anything you need to know in this modern digital world of ours if you want to survive as a private citizen. This is episode 66 for Wednesday, the 21st of April, 2021. Flock of sheep. My name is Fab. Hello, welcome to the show. I'm coming live to you from the rather complicated city of Düsseldorf in Germany. Hope you're doing good. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, today we're going to talk about FLoC, Federated Learning of Cohorts, which is a new advertising technology that Google is proposing to replace third-party cookies, which at first glance sounds good. There was a lot of noise on the internet about it. I'm a bit late, as I am currently, because I've got so much to do. It just took me ages to get around to the topic. But we're here now. And there's a lot of noise, a lot of controversy. Some of it I understand. Some people saying this is very horrible. I don't think it's as horrible as a lot of people making it out to be. It's still horrible enough, though. I think it's horrible enough that we don't want it. But I'm gonna let's save that for the main part of the show. Quick mention here. Next week's episode is gonna be. I said when I say I do this live, I record these live on Twitch now, and obviously sometimes that's pretty cool because then I get like live feedback from people, and I kind of like that. But I think the next episode, that next week's episode is not. I might not live stream that, and it's probably not gonna come out on Wednesday. I'm trying to bring it to you earlier, but I can't promise that. So we will see. I'm pretty sure I'll get around to having an episode for you next week. Just know I've got like lots to do. The problem of being a freelancer and working, jumping in when normal journalists don't work or whatever. It's always like short notice, and this is like I got some stuff to do. That kind of prevents me from planning. But I'll try to get an episode to you next week. That's the main part. Just don't be alarmed if it ain't out on Wednesday. And if you like watching these live, I might not be able to live stream it, but we'll see. Things are complicated right now. Speaking of complicated things, let's get right into the topic of the show. Let's talk about Google's FLoC, what it's all about, how it came to be, what the controversy is. So to start this off, very easy. Users don't want to be tracked, generally. I think this is something we all know. If you listen to this podcast, you probably know it. Google certainly knows it. There's been lots of studies, lots of tests. Whenever you give people the ability to opt out of tracking on the web, they will do that. Like about 90%, I think, is the accepted number, will just not, doesn't want to be tracked. And this is not only people who install ad blockers or whatever. This is just like normal people. If you ask them would you like to be tracked on the internet, they would, they always say no. So everybody knows this. Google knows this. Advertisers know this. So basically, if you work in the advertising industry, this is going to be hard for you, but I'm a journalist. I'm on the other end. I'm not on the PR end. I'm on the end of. I'm trying to be on the end of the end user. This is going to be tough love, but I think basically people who are selling ads, they know they're scumbags. They're a little bit of a seedy business, because basically they know they might tell themselves something different, but they know that the thing they're selling is something that the people who affects it don't want, right? I mean, you've got advertisers, they want this ads and tracking to happen. You have ad tech companies, they want that to happen. But the user, the person who's affected, doesn't want this. And I gotta qualify this a bit, because back in the day, I've been doing podcasts for a very, very long time, and on other podcasts that I did, for example, Linux Outlaws, we often talked about ads and stuff as well, because there was a question coming up if we would have ads on the podcast, even though a Linux podcast, it wasn't primarily about ads or tracking or anything like that, or privacy. But of course, we would talk about these things. And in the past, I'd said, and I'd still maintain this a little bit, like if you give me ads, I prefer targeted ads, not too targeted, but if I have the choice, if I have the choice between no ads, just general ads or targeted ads, I would choose no ads. And I said that back in the day as well. But if I only have the choice between targeted ads and just random ads that don't apply to me, probably targeted ads are better. I'd find something I like. I still maintain that, although these days I've gotten a lot older and a lot wiser, and I've seen a lot in life. And I think the problem with targeted ads is not the targeted ads themselves, but the technology. So we'll get into that. But generally, I think users don't want ads, and I think many users don't want targeted ads either these days. And I mean, we know this, the advertisers know this, and because we all know this, but nothing's happening, there are other things happening. There's now regulation, there's legislation, especially in the EU, the GDPR, that curtails what people can do to track users on the web. And, the GDPR is mostly about, how data is stored and used, but, that affects all of this. And, this tracking stuff is a big reason. And we also have a push to get rid of the biggest technology, the worst offender, so to speak. Like the technology is currently being used to track people most of the time, which is third-party cookies, which is a bastardization of something. When back in the day, the forefathers of the internet, they created the internet. And cookies were meant as a way to track sessions across websites, right? To store information. Because the web being only like basically GET requests, you can't really in the traditional sense of how the web was designed, of how the infrastructure was designed, you couldn't like remember people on a website, right? So there was the idea of putting stuff in the URL, but that's not the best thing. So cookies were generally, if you want to log in, if you have a forum, right, and you want to log in, because like you don't want the forum to forget who you are every time you reload a page. So you need cookies. Now, in the original design of the web, they weren't designed so that they would just work across one website. They can also work across the whole web, because they thought that was powerful. And they didn't really think about it. Like a lot of web technologies back in the day, they didn't really think about this kind of stuff. They didn't think about that you can use that for tracking. And, if you're very new to this podcast and these kind of issues, basically what is happening is companies aggregate basically kind of like places on the web, right? So Google owns DoubleClick, which is a company that aggregates these kind of things. So basically, they give you a cookie, which is just a text file stored in your browser, and then every time you come, like that cookie gets sent, like gets requested by all kinds of websites. And every time you come across a website that works together with one of these ad networks, let's say DoubleClick, right? They recognize you, not you as a person, but like your browser specifically. And because companies like Google own a huge part of the web, or have their like little beacons or sensors on pretty much any website, they can they're on CNN.com, they're on Amazon, whatever, they're everywhere, so they know wherever you are, and they can collect this information and they can build a profile about you, which is what we traditionally call tracking. Now, people want to get rid of this third-party cookie because possibility, because you can turn that off, right? The way cookies are used to track you on a website, to track that you're logged in, or to track your shopping cart or whatever, that's first-party cookies. That is cookies that apply between you and the website and no other website. If you turn third-party cookies off, that still works, but the tracking won't work. And because people have realized that, there have been pushes, everywhere to turn this off, and it will be turned off because basically all the big browser makers have decided that they're going to do this, and people like Google who benefit from this tracking, they see the writing on the wall. So basically what Google is doing here with this new technology that's going to replace third-party cookies is they are fighting a rearguard action. They know they're going to lose this ability for third-party cookies, so they need an alternative. And that's what FLoC is, because Google's revenue, surprise, comes I think 100% from tracking people. I mean, that's what they do. There's Alphabet and there's other parts of like the Google empire that make other money, but basically, Google itself, that's how they make their money. Now, FLoC is something called Federated Learning of Cohorts. It's a horrible acronym. They have all these bird things going on. I think it's supposed to be a flock of birds, like flock of a feather or birds of a feather or whatever. I like to think of it as flock of sheep. I think when Google designed this, they were like, yo, those sheep, how can we track those sheep some more? So I'm going to use that metaphor. I like that a lot better. As usual, I have these links. So if you go to privatecitizen.press, I have show notes. This is episode 66. So you go to episode 66 and you find all this stuff. All the stuff I use to explain what I'm going to explain. So, you can read that and maybe think I'm wrong. I encourage you to build your own understanding of it and think critically, because that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to foster in other people. And I have to say, right, for where the discussion goes, right, how do you like ads? Don't you like ads? I mean, full disclosure, I'm a journalist. I'm a freelance journalist, but I'm a journalist. So I make most of my money by selling, right, as a freelance journalist, I sell text, I sell articles to websites who make their money back of you, the reader, via ads. So pretty much all my income comes from ads. I'm trying to get off that, which this podcast is part of. That's why I have Patreon and all that. And that's why this podcast doesn't have any tracking. There's no tracking on this website. There's no tracking in the podcast. There's no tracking on my personal website, fab.industries. So I'm trying to get away from that in my personal thing. But, I think any self-respecting journalist, while knowing that that's how you make your money, should be against ads. It's a reality of our world, but that doesn't mean we have to like it. I think Google's problem is that they came up in a world, they're the internet company. They came up in an internet, in a world where you make money off the internet from ads. Right? That's the reality of how we live. Like there was the .com bubble where people basically tried to do it another way and it all collapsed, and Google and Amazon, those are the companies that rose from the ashes there, and Google just went, yes, ads are the answer. And I actually think the internet is moving and should be moving away from this. Not completely from ads, but we'll get into that a little bit later when I discuss like this whole targeting thing, but like from targeted ads. I think there's a push, Apple just announced today that they have podcast subscriptions now. This is all a push to get people to pay for content directly to get away from this whole ad mechanism, which is not only the problem with this whole tracking thing is not only the ads, but like it's also abused by, intelligence services and all that. We know from Snowden that these mechanisms are being abused. So this whole tracking stuff, we want to get away from that. Mod7 says, thanks for no tracking. I give my best. I mean, with this podcast, it's kind of obvious. It makes things harder if you write, if you write a blog and you want to figure out what people like, so you can give them more of that. That's why you use web analytics, right? But I went out of my way to have a hoster that has analytics that's GDPR compliant. So they're basically just the server statistics and then get deleted after 30 days. And I've learned to live with that. I've certainly met journalists in my previous work life that were very convinced that ads are a thing. They're a good thing even, And, there's this crossover thing where journalists, they become editors and then they become like basically editors-in-chief, at which point you're pretty much a middle manager. I decided I never wanted to go that road because I'm in the journalism for the writing. And you become kind of this person who's basically spends 90% of his time or her time deciding what ads or what, technologies, if you don't make enough money from ads, that you can, basically hide ads in pretty much. Where those go on the website, right? And I just want to write stories. That's one of the big reasons, by the way, why I quit and became a freelance journalist, because I didn't see a way forward. It's like, okay, if you actually want to get promoted, then you turn into this middle manager who's just trying to decide how to make money off people. And that's not what I want you to do. So there's certainly journalists who think that, but I think any self-respecting journalist has to, like, we're not PR people. As a journalist, your ethical responsibilities to your reader, right? They're assholes, and their comments are not nice, but at the end of the day, they're the people I'm doing this for, right? I'm not doing this to make, I want to make money so I can survive. But if I was in this for the money, I wouldn't have spent 13 years producing free content, audio content, thousands and thousands of hours of audio content for people. I mean, I probably produced as much audio content for free as some radio people do. If I was in this for the money, I would be in PR or something, right? I would be writing advertising copy because that's where the money comes from. But I want to do this, I want to inform people and entertain people. I think the best there's a middle ground there where you can be entertained and informed. I want to kind of hit that. That's kind of my goal. But anyway, yes. So let's just stick with advertising. Is kind of seedy. We all know it. We don't want it. And we're probably all not employees of advertising agencies. So let's speak among ourselves here. And so Google's this FLoC, this Federated Learning of Cohorts, is basically an ad technology that is supposed to replace third-party cookies because they see the writing on the wall is running away from them. They have the most popular browser, but still every other browser goes and gets rid of third-party cookies, and big push by Mozilla, I think. Then they can't really resist that, and they need to go with the flow, and that's what Google is really good at. So they're fighting this rearguard action, right? Because they want to maintain this grip they have on metadata of users on the web, right? They have a grip on, they know, with the search engine what information is where, and I use the search engine a lot because it's a good search engine. But they also know what users are consuming, and that's their main. That knowledge is Google's main asset. And in their very announcement, I've linked this, and I'm not going to read it, it's just propaganda bullshit. But the very first sentence tells you everything you need to know about Google and how they see the world. So this guy who writes this starts with, it's difficult to conceive of the internet we know today, with information on every topic in every language at the fingertips of billions of people, without advertising as its economic foundation. And that tells you everything about Google's whole worldview, how they came up, after the .com bubble. That's where they that's where they became big. You can see that they're actually saying in this that they're developing a privacy-safe method to deliver this kind of advertising. Google, there is no fucking privacy-safe method to do what you're trying to do. They say they have privacy in mind. If they had privacy in mind, they would not do this. They wouldn't do it. Right? They don't have privacy in mind. That's not their thing. That's not what Google does. They say that because, it's a good look, but that's not, they can't conceive of the internet as we have it today to be there without ads. I don't know about you, but if I just sit down with a nice cup of tea or coffee and make my, get everything else out of my head, and I'm sitting there philosophically, I'm thinking, hey, what would the internet have been like if instead of advertising, we just had people just paying for shit, right? If you just pay, if most of the websites out there is personal websites, blogs, they make a little bit of money from ads, but people are basically running this out of their own pocket, right? And then there's big websites, and people actually pay for that. And then right now they're paying for it with their information. But you could see a world where people are paying for that. That's not I can imagine that. I don't understand. I think that's Google's internal culture. I think that's actually the problem here. Google is the last person who should develop a technology like this because they can't. can't even imagine a world without advertising. So they can't imagine then what should really be next. They can't imagine that. But we're gonna wrap around that at the end. At the end, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. What we actually should be doing instead of this FLoC thing. Let's first talk about what FLoC actually is and how it works. So instead of third-party cookies, i.e., putting a text file into your browser that basically, that websites can request, and your browser will just hand out on request, and then the website knows, I'd say, who you are, but not really. They can recognize that browser and presumably the user. And, it changes. People reinstall their system, but it stays there for a very, very long time. Instead of doing this, FLoC is a proposed mechanism by which, or it's actually been tested, so it's implemented, by which your browser, currently that's only Chrome, pretty much every other browser maker said they're not going to do this for now. They create a list of all websites, and as far as I understand this, only like TLDs, top-level domains, so they're not pages of individual websites, but if you go to CNN.com, that'll be tracked, and /world, /international, whatever, /Germany, that'll all be the same. They'll just save CNN.com. They'll make a list of these websites that you have visited in the last week. So a big step forward with this in one regard is actually that only of this information only survives a week, unlike a tracking cookie which could be in your browser for years if you don't reinstall your system, or you don't clear your cookies, whatever, which normal users don't do, right? They usually have tracking cookies that are years old. So it's only about 7 days, right? So they compile this list of all websites you're visiting, and then they hash that. And they don't use a regular hash mechanism. They use something which I'd actually never heard of. It's called SimHash. It is a technology that is in some cases like a normal hash, and in other cases it isn't. So like the cryptographically secure hashes that we might know, this should not be reversible. So you make a list of all the websites, you hash them, and you get a string. Right? From that string, you can't go back to those websites. That's how a cryptographically secure hash works. Yes, there are collisions and, things might go wrong, but generally that's how it works. Now, SimHash is different because you can actually, while it's still not reversible, you can actually infer by comparing two hashes how close they are. With a normal, in air quotes, normal hashing algorithm, let's say I have a list of 10 websites, right? And I hash that, and I get a string. If I change one character in there, I get a completely different string, right? Vastly different every time. With SimHash, let's say 9 of those 10 websites from the first hash and the second hash are the same. I just change one website, just a few strings. I can actually tell from the hash that these websites are largely the same. How close the two resulting hashes seem to each other actually tells me how close the originating data set was, which is pretty cool, while still being cryptographically secure. I don't know. This seems pretty new technology, and with everything in IT security, you can't really say if it works, if it's secure. You basically have to wait till people bash on it and attack it, and then they find vulnerabilities, and then those get fixed and whatever. But it seems kind of cool from the outset. So they make these in your browser, and they use these hashes to create what they call a cohort. So they create a cohort ID from this hash, or they use the hash. I don't in detail completely understand how it works. It's really complicated. But if you want to, I have the API specification and a paper where Google talks about how attackable this is and whatever. We'll get into that later in the show notes. Private citizen, not press. So they create cohorts. So basically what they're doing is they're grouping people into like these cohort groups based on what websites they visit. Now, this is a step forward from tracking insofar that, they can get this cohort, but like, let's say there's a cohort with 1 million web users in there that visit the same website as me, right? Every time I go to a website, they just know somebody from this cohort just came. They don't know that's Fab's browser. Well, often with normal tracking, they would, like with third-party cookies, they wouldn't know it's Fab's browser. Generally, they would always recognize the same browser. Now then, of course, people like Google and Facebook, where you also log in with your real name, maybe if you use their services, they actually know who I am. They maybe even know my address and my credit card number. But generally with this FLoC thing, they would just know I'm in that cohort. Which is a change. And then they're selling this to advertisers. Now, the way the API works is that, and this is a big criticism, that this is transmitted by the browser with every request. Whereas a cookie, a website doesn't know what cookies I have in my browser. But, if you have let's say double click, put a cookie there. And if I go to a website that has like a double click thing embedded, or, Facebook does this, right? So every Facebook login button on any website does this kind of shit. It asks Facebook for the Facebook cookie. It asks my browser for the Facebook cookie, and then my browser will give it to him. But to the website. But they have to initiate that, right? They have to ask for that cookie. And if it's from a company they don't know, they will not get that cookie. The thing with FLoC is it announces itself preemptive. Any website I visit, it goes like, okay, this is cohort, this and that. So this is while the process of generating this cohort ID happens on my PC and Google doesn't know, so it's this system should guarantee that I'm anonymous. Let's say I'm anonymous in a certain group, right? So Google, this API only tells people the cohort ID. They don't even know what cohort that is. They have to figure that out. Presumably Google will use, every website that currently has double click on it and asks for a third-party cookie. Google will use that to track this cohort ID, by which then they don't really know because they can't reverse that hash, right? They don't know which websites I've visited, but they will recognize me again and again, or certain people, okay, let's put it this way. Let's say part of my cohort ID is influenced because, let's say I'm playing Escape from Tarkov a lot currently. It's a video game, right? And let's say that goes into my cohort ID somehow. And let's say Google has this listening devices, basically these double click things, on pretty much any website that on escapefromtarkov.com, maybe with the developer because they put ads there, like some wiki, some forums, right? Then it will notice that a certain cohort ID visits like all these Escape from Tarkov websites, and then Google can go, well, ID 223569 obviously would be a good target for Escape from Tarkov ads because these guys keep turning up on all the websites that we know have something to do with Tarkov. So basically what Google will do, Google will build two huge databases. A database of these are all the websites we know, and these IDs, and we know these IDs, right, these cohort IDs, and then they can match that. They can see what cohort ID goes where, and then they can figure out, okay, this cohort ID is kind of like they're interested in cars, and these guys are interested in children's supply, children toys, whatever, Legos, I don't know, anything. So this kind of preserves this edge that Google has. While this mechanism is kind of like an open standard, it can be used by anybody. And these IDs are out there, right? And I'm announcing my cohort ID to anybody on the internet I go to. They don't know what that means. Google knows, and they can then sell the advertisers, right? They can then go, okay, if you have a website and you want to, if you want to advertise your website, Google can know, well, okay, so you have an Escape from Tarkov website. We can sell your banner ads to your website on all these other sites where all these people go. They can basically sell my cohort ID. All of us who are in that cohort, they can sell that to the advertiser. Now, the big thing, of course, is that this is automatically shared with any website I visit. But if it works correctly, they can't tell from that. They can't tell anything. Of course, if they work together with an ad tech network, they can. They could just basically buy that information from Google. Now, the big downside with this is that with the third-party cookie mechanism, there was actually a lot of work. There's a lot of, you have to actually do something, right? You have to have places on the web that put cookies in browsers that read them out. With this cohort ID, I'm spewing that out to everyone. Like, you have a Chrome browser, Google is actually testing this right now, right? Let's say you are in this testing group. You're actually telling my server when you go there that you're in this cohort ID. Of course, my server is not logging that, but I could, right? I could, I don't know if the information would mean much to me, but I could do that. So that's, of course, a bit big criticism. Now, Google says so basically, as a web admin, Google says we don't want these cohorts to be used to figure out that somebody to figure out sensitive people about people, right? Let's say you and me are in cohort 123659. Google doesn't want other places on the web or themselves to be able to figure out anything like they deem sensitive about us, right? That we, like Escape from Tarkov maybe, is not sensitive, but our religion or our sexual preference or let's say I'm gay, right? And they don't want people to be able to tell from these cohorts that somebody's gay or that they're poor or that they have mental problems or that they buy Viagra or, that they have a certain illness, right? COVID, I don't know. So they don't want to do that. So they build some protections against that. Just before I go on, just Astral C asked in Twitch chat. So instead of using user-specific cookie IDs to find relevant ads, Google will use the cohort ID. But it sounds like it uses the same analysis on it. Yeah, basically. I think that is basically the idea. It eliminates. I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna pick that up when I get into after I explain how this works. I'm gonna get into the traditional tracking versus this new way, which I've heard called profiling, which I like. So I'm going to call it that. So tracking versus profiling, we'll get into that. Anyway, but what I wanted to say here is this is also very important. Google has a research paper. I use that term loosely. I think it's technically a research paper. It's called Measuring Sensitivity of Cohorts Generated by the FLoC API. Where they explain how this works. It uses some kind of, it's called K-anonymity, some kind of statistic value to enable, to figure out if something is actually anonymous or if you can get back from basically the hash to the original thing. This is something that specifically also came up with Troy Hunt's, the haveibeenpawned.com, the website where you can basically you send them your password and they tell you if that password was in a in a hack, in a data breach, but they don't want your password. So you're actually not sending them their password. Your browser is hashing your password and sends the hash to the website. And they came up with like all this statistic analysis and science basically to figure out that is cryptographically secure, right? That nobody from the hash you're sending to that website, that nobody's actually able to tell your password, because that obviously would be catastrophic. And Google is using the same approach here. Now, but what they also are doing is they're excluding certain websites that they seem sensitive, like religious stuff. The problem here is that the huge problem that I see is that Google's determining that. And that is obviously not going to cut it. Because Google, I can already tell. I mean, I'm not in this program because I'm in the EU, and but we'll get into that as well. But like, I can already tell that Google has a completely different. Even well-meaning Google employees will have a very different understanding of what is sensitive than I am. I mean, they're from the US. I'm from the EU. There's many cultural differences. The GDPR being a legislative example of that. Then I'm personally, like, I don't, for them, it's maybe very, very sensitive what religion somebody is. I don't care. Like, I tell anybody I'm an atheist. I don't actually, I'm I don't care. I don't know what that, I can't remember what that is. But anyway, right? That's not sensitive information to me, but it might be to somebody else. It might be to a Google employee. Something might be sensitive information for me, that a Google employee doesn't seem sensitive. And they are deciding, they have a list of websites where they go, okay, these are religious websites, these are political websites, and we're not going to use them in these ID calculations, which is dumb. For example, the privatecitizen.press, I'm pretty sure they're using that for the ID calculations, right? They would put that, like if you were in that trial, Chrome would put that in the hash, because it's not like whatever, gop.gov or whatever. It's not like the Democrat website in the US, right? It's not what they deem a political website. I think I think the Private Citizen is a very political website. If you go to that, you will figure out that these people probably don't like tracking, which is something you shouldn't track. You should build in a cohort ID. But hey, so I don't think we can let it be up to Google to decide these things. I think that is a huge flaw. And actually, Mode7 says you should become a dudist. Sorry, off topic. Actually, I was thinking about. I'm gonna take this hint from Twitch chat to go into a rat hole here, because I feel like that's also a bit of a thing on my podcast. I was actually, for some weird unrelated reason, I was actually thinking about that the other day, and I was thinking about the problem of dudism. So, quick side rant. Dudism. I mean, people will know. I used to do a podcast with Dan Lynch, Linux Outlaws, and I don't know if Dan's a dudist, but he's pretty close. He's pretty much the dude abides. It's kind of thing. Well, I think it's a very good personal. It's probably a very good philosophy for your personal health. Dudist philosophy is basically just survive. I don't care. I'm gonna deal with it. Don't get upset over things you can't change, this kind of thing. And I think for some people that would be a perfect way to live by. It's kind of like Taoist inspired, I think. I think it's, for some people it's good. I think it would probably be good for some people if they would convert it to that. It would be better than their current way of being. But I think if on a society scale, too many people do this, our society is going to shit. I think I was thinking about this under the shower. I think about things like this a lot under the shower. Because basically this whole, we're going to deal with it attitude, like if we had that historically, right? Hitler would still be in power. Like if the Americans if the Russians would have, just like let that, Chamberlain, the British, their initial approach to Hitler was basically a dudist approach. Oh, let that guy, it's not as bad, just let him, there's all this. We wouldn't have never gone to space. The Russians didn't put Sputnik in space, and Kennedy didn't put the Americans on the moon, in a laissez-faire attitude. You only do this shit if you actually care and get excited about things and annoyed about things, and you want to change the world. There's a lot of things that wouldn't have happened if the people concerned would have been do this. So Google would be tracking who's drinking White Russians. Yeah, maybe. Dan's chill incarnate. That's true as well. And I don't begrudge anybody personally this attitude. I think it's I'm just not built that way. Probably be better for my health if I was, but I'm just not built that way. And I just think on a societal level, it would not be good. Fadi says, why not Pastafarian? Basically, because I don't need. That's the other thing. Judaism is, I think, a religion. I don't need an alternative religion. Like my whole thing about I think I'm not an atheist. An atheist is a person who says God doesn't exist. I'm not that. There's I don't know what is it's like, what's it called? I'm going to Google this now because it's just completely making me weird. Atheism versus okay, if God exists. Let's see if Google is as good as I think. Agnostic. That's it. So you're quicker than Google, or quicker than me typing something on the podcast. That is exactly it. An agnostic is somebody who doesn't have an opinion. And I think that is actually, for me, that is the actual scientific approach, I feel. Because in order to be an atheist, in order to say that God doesn't exist, you kind of would have to prove that. And it's very hard. We recently talked about the scientific method, and one thing I actually didn't go into, I think, in detail is that it's almost always impossible to prove a negative. It'd be much easier to prove that God does exist than he doesn't exist. I mean, of course, there's philosophies about it. Anyway, I don't think I need that. I don't need a an alternative to religion anyway. But let's get back to the topic at hand. I know you like to be a contrarian. Actually, I don't. I've talked about this before. At least I'm not. People think that because I often take contrarian positions. But I've thought about this long and hard as well in recent times, and I'm not doing this consciously. Maybe I'm doing this unconsciously. That could be a thing. But I think the problem is a problem of bias. Okay, let's get into this as well, and then we're going to get back to the topic. I think it's a problem of bias. It's also part why I want to be a journalist. I concentrate on issues that I find interesting, and the issues that are interesting to me are the contrarian issues, right? So if the reason why I criticize my colleagues in the media a lot is because that is interesting to me, right? So if there's let's say I'm reading the normal mainstream press here in Germany, and there's an issue, and they write about this issue, and I'm thinking, yeah, they're right about this, right? I'm not gonna spend any energy going into that and figuring out I'm thinking about that critically, but if I come to the conclusion that they're right, I'm like, yeah, they're right. And Der Spiegel just wrote about that. I don't need to write about that on my blog. It gets interesting to me when I read something in Der Spiegel and I'm like, they're completely wrong about this. That is when I get the impulse to write about it, to make a podcast about it. And because that is what people hear, I think that's, they see the contrarian side of me. I also have another, meet me at a party and we'll discuss something. There's lots of points when I probably go, yeah, that's, you're completely right on that. Right? But why would I make a podcast about that? I'm not contrarian, but you're wrong. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, let's get back to this issue at hand. So Google decides what websites are, sensitive. And I don't want them to do that because I have a very different opinion of what's sensitive. You can look into this research paper. It's very interesting. I mean, I say the term. It's actually very interesting how they statistically make sure that you can't infer certain things. And of course, it all depends, I think, on how big the cohorts are, which I haven't found any specific information. I think they don't know yet. They're still testing all of that. But like, I'm used to the term research paper lightly because, I mean, this is Google people writing a research paper. It is a research paper, but like advertising a Google technology, right? So it's kind of like some kind of highbrow propaganda, right? It's not like researchers who are like, oh, I always wanted to research this privacy thing. No, it's all Google people that have designed a technology, and instead of writing a blog post about it, they write a research paper, which is a lot more work, and it's a lot more scientific, but it's essentially, that's not what, like, as we discussed previously in previous episodes, that to me, that's not the core of science. That's not how that works to me. But yeah. Now, this whole thing, I think it's technology. From a technology standpoint, it is relatively solid. It generated immediate criticism and immediate controversy. One of the reasons, maybe the biggest reason, is that this is Google. And Google is going, oh, tracking is evil. The thing we've been doing for decades that we've been inflicting on you is evil. Now we have a better solution. It's kind of like, when people go like, oh, Norway is amazing as a country. They're really forward looking. They're going completely electric cars next year, or like in 2 years or 5 years, whatever. They're all driving Teslas. And I'm sitting there going, how did Norway make all of its money? Oh, yes, by selling oil to all countries for the last 100 years. That's how they made the money they put in a fund from which they're paying the infrastructure now to make like electric cars. Yeah, all right. Yeah, they're forward looking now after they've made all that money, and they've, put all these all the evil carbon monoxide into the air. So that's kind of the same thing. I think this is why it garnered a lot of criticism, but also because, of course, they came out and said, oh yeah, by the way, we're running this trial, and if you use Chrome, like 10% of you or whatever will be in this trial. And so they've basically put people in this test they're running without telling them, or telling them later. But like, you'd have to from my experience, you have to explicitly tell you start. They update Chrome and put that in there, and it starts up. Like, it needs to bring up a message telling you this is what FLoC is, and we'd like to put you in this testing group, and this is all the implications. They didn't do that. They're also not testing it in Europe because there is questions if this whole technology is GDPR. That's been asked in the tech press. That's the reason why they're not testing it in Europe. It's not GDPR compliant. I'm not quite sure, because if it works as intended, I'm pretty sure it is GDPR compliant. I think what's not GDPR compliant is just opting users into that, because the GDPR is for many, one of the biggest things. This is why we have the current cookie mess again. It's all about informed consent. If you want to do something like this, you have to tell people what you're doing beforehand. You can't just write a blog post. Oh yeah, by the way, we've been doing this, and that's the thing. Like, that was controversial, and I understand that. And also, they basically made all webmasters who use Google Ads complicit in this, right? So the way they're tracking these cohort IDs on the other end is Google Ads, like in your fucking website if you use Google Ads. And while you have you've installed Google Ads because, like, I mean, we can talk about the morality here of if it's okay to say, yeah, I'm good with third-party cookies. That's why I installed Google Ads. Now I'm upset because they did this. We can talk about if that's like completely makes complete sense. But they opted webmasters into a new tracking technology without telling them, tracking users. And the worst part, which somebody on Twitter I got a link to in the Discord. I'm actually follow this guy. I've seen a lot of his stuff before. Errol Balkan. He got very upset about this, and I kind of understand. Basically, if I don't want this thing, if I run a website, which I do, privatecitizen.press or fab.industries or scenictarkov.com, if I have a website and there's no tracking technology on there, which all these websites that I run do not have any tracking technology. Nothing. It's a static website. There's nothing happening there. Google now uses, if you visit my website and you're in this, let's just say everybody, you're using Chrome, you visit my website, it uses your fucking browser to track you via my website URL. And Google's like, hey, if you don't want, if you don't want that, you can just put some code. You can just give a server head. I'll actually have to figure out how to do this with my hosting company because I object to this as much as Errol Balkan, who says, fuck you, Google. He actually says, I can't believe, I like this guy because he's a bit like me. He says what he thinks. I can't believe I'm having to write this code in a fucking web server. What a mockery of the web, human rights, and the GDPR. Fuck you, Google. And you basically, what you basically have to do is you have to set a server head, like a response header that, basically, if somebody requests that website, it tells the browser, don't put this fucking URL in this cohort tracking, which that should be the default, right? I didn't go to the fucking actual hard work to build a website that fucking doesn't track anybody, to disable everything in maybe the Hugo theme, that there would be Google ad things, whatever. I turned it all off. It's a static website, and then Google just tracks you with the fucking web browser. I can understand why people, while this is controversial, I think they have a point. I think this is really annoying. But let's stop ranting, and let's wrap this all up by doing this discussion that I hinted about a lot. And let's compare this new profiling to the old school way of tracking you on the web. Actually, before we do that, Mode 7 has a good question in Twitch chat. How do we know they honor that request anyway? We don't know, but they're publicly saying, and I'm pretty sure they're opening themselves up to some heavy legislation, even in the US, which is probably the laxest. Oh, not anymore. If you consider California, there'll be lawsuits. If somebody figures this out, this is going to be horrible. And I don't think actually that's in there. And they don't need to do that because, who many administrators are going to turn this fucking, it'll be this Balkan guy and me and 3 listeners to this podcast, right? That'll be the people who do that. They'll still get signals from the rest of the web. Browser do not track is on Google, lol. Yeah, it's pretty much as useful as do not track. Anyway, let's talk about how this compares. How traditional tracking compares to this new thing, which I like the term profiling. So this isn't tracking. It's not tracking in a way that third-party cookies are tracking you. Third-party cookies enable somebody who has their beacons out in the web to follow your web browser going along the web. And they figure out stuff like how long you're on the website, what are you reading, all this kind of shit. What are you doing there? They can figure all of that out. So that's not this. This actually, the reason that for this to be is anonymizing users. Now, how anonymized they are, I don't know. Somebody who knows a lot more about statistics and some cryptologists will have to read that paper, and I'm sure they're doing that right now. And I have to analyze that. I'm going to assume it is, but, from all that we know about metadata analysis, if I talked in the past about geodata and how hard it is to anonymize that, especially when it comes to machine learning and stuff. If you have a huge data set, the question is, can't they just pretty much pinpoint you? The EFF calls this fingerprint, or the terms fingerprinting, in their blog post about this, the EFF talked a lot about that. I don't know. I don't know if they're right. I don't know if you can actually fingerprint people, if the system works as Google says it does, and it'll be vetted by third-party people. then maybe not. But because of that, I wouldn't declare it benign, personally. Mode 7, Mode 7 asks, I'm really sorry I missed this. Is JavaScript based or the component of the browser? It's a component of the browser. It is built into the browser. So it compiles locally these URLs, creates this ID, and then sends it with, as far as I can understand, with every request you make. It sends this ID. And then the website can listen for that or not. That's how I understand how it works. So I wouldn't declare this benign because profiling in itself is not benign. So people who contrast this, so I've read about this. I've listened to some podcasts where people were talking about this kind of stuff, and they make a very big mistake. They say, "Oh, this is not tracking. This is profiling. Tracking. They're tracking you individually." Yes. Theoretically, they're doing that, but what these people are missing is that this kind of profiling is exactly what advertisers are currently doing with third-party cookies, right? They don't care. And, Google, I think, even doesn't care if it's fab. They don't want to track fab's way across the web. They want to put fab in a cohort of people that they can then sell to the advertisers. Because the advertiser is not going to pay Google, and they can't, like that would be a huge privacy violation. That they can't go, I want to know what Fab does. They want to know, what does a 37-year-old married man who sits at home all day and doesn't have kids, what does he buy? Or whatever. Like, they want these cohorts. They want exactly what FLoC is doing. That is exactly what third-party cookies are doing right now. That's exactly what advertisers are in for. So to say, like, the result of this is different, I don't think so. I don't think Google's goal with this was they saw the third-party cookie ship burning in the background, and they were like, okay, we need a new technology that is more acceptable to people, but to us, this is the same thing. And that's what this is. And so basically, they're creating a profile of you. Basically, this is what targeted advertising does anyway. I like to call this a prejudice generator. And it doesn't work. Like, the thing is, Google, with this whole thing, is like, yeah, people want advertisers want targeted advertising. And yes, they do. And they're like, oh, this new thing is going to, like, FLoC is going to blow up. People get double the revenue. I don't think they will. If they would, Google would pocket some of that money. But doesn't matter, right? But, like, the other comment I have with that, I've made this comment on podcasts literally for decades, and it's never changed. This shit does not work. This fucking targeted advertising does not work. Nobody on the web can fucking target things to me. Nobody. Like, Facebook's like, oh, he likes magic cards. Do you want to buy fake magic cards from China? No. No. I buy actual magic cards from Wizards of the Coast. Thank you. And you know that. Right? Amazon, I've been shopping. Like, I mean, people are like, oh my God, the pandemic, I'm shopping so much on Amazon. I've been shopping. Like people are now discovering in mainstream how much they shop on Amazon. I've been shopping that much on Amazon since 2007. Amazon, with the same account, Amazon knows I'm sitting in this room, right? Literally the furniture's from IKEA, but like literally half of the like loose stuff around here is bought on Amazon. And they still can't figure out what I want to buy. Right? They still go, like, Amazon for literally decades now has been advertising Bruce Springsteen CDs to me that I have in my fucking records cabinet that I've bought on Amazon. They advertise hard copy books of books that I own on the Kindle, which is linked to the very Amazon account. This shit does not work. Targeted advertising does not work, at least not for me. Maybe you have to be like a more mainstream person, but it does not work for me. That's like the unspoken thing of this. It generates all these prejudices, and I think that's why it doesn't work. Because they're like, oh, a guy like Fab in that age group with that income, you know what he likes? He likes, I mean, what would that guy like? I don't know. He likes this kind of suit or something. It's all that. It's like all these prejudices. And if you do not belong, which I think, if you listen to this podcast, you probably have the same problem, because as geeks, we're usually hard to put into like these prejudice cohorts. Like, it doesn't fucking work for us. Mode 7 says, I have bought so many glass dildos based on targeted advertising. I just can't help it. And they know it. They know. Yeah, it's see, and I keep buying glass dildos, and they just advertise like baby diapers to me. I don't know what's going on. But like, that's just a side rant. This fucking stuff doesn't work. On also another topic, profiling is fucking evil. Profiling in the history of like human history has caused like the worst. Like, okay, we can do the obvious example of like the Gestapo and profiling your religion and then putting you in a concentration camp. But like, I think really essentially this whole shit was pioneered by the Cheka and some guy called Felix Dzerzhinsky. So if you never heard that name, look him up. There's some interesting knowledge to be gained there. But they basically build like this mass murdering regime, Stalinism, based on discriminating against people. Based on cohorts, their upbringing, their religion, their past associations, like their work status. They built a regime on like on this somewhat crazy idea of largely imaginary social classes that Lenin and Stalin, Lenin, Marx, and Engels came up with, and they put people in these classes, and then they basically discriminated against them. And you don't even have to want to build like a regime, like a mass murdering regime. You can use profiling for all kinds of shady means, and it has been used. I mean, this is what intelligence services do. They came up with this. The Cheka, an intelligence service, came up with this, with the idea of, hey, so traditionally intelligence services were like, hey, let's spy on that guy, and that guy might be a dissident, and let's spy on that dude, he might be a foreign spy. They came up with the idea of like doing it to everybody by default. Just have files on everybody, right? And that's basically what Google is doing. That's basically what these companies are doing. And maybe I'm very sensitive to this because I'm from Germany, and we had like a lot of people these days seem to have forgotten this, but we had like a part of Germany in the east where they did this shit. That's where the term Stasi comes from. They did that on everybody. Like your neighbor was fucking spying on you, and everything ended up in a file. You could actually pull your file. I think my dad did. Like my dad had like, because he was in a certain political party, he wasn't even living in the fucking country, and they had a file on him. It's profiling is bad. Profiling is not good. And to say, hey, tracking is evil, but profiling is okay. And I kind of want targeted ads, which as I said in the beginning, was kind of my stance for a while. That just leaves this whole mechanism that is underneath that, just leaves it that just doesn't take that into account. And and aside from all that, changing third-party cookies to this FLoC thing doesn't change the fact that a lot of fucking companies that are all over the internet, like Google and Facebook, they still know who you are. They probably know you if you use Gmail. They're basically analyzing your email. If you use Facebook, they know who you talk to and what about. They know your name, right? They know this stuff. And that's not going to change that problem. So I think you could say that, FLoC would be a good step if, and this is a very big if we actually get rid of all third-party cookies everywhere and related technologies, like back in the day it was flash cookies, anything like basically that you can circumvent where you're basically doing the same thing. If we do that and if we go to FLoC, we do have some bonuses. I don't think it's as privacy oriented as Google says it is, but it'll be better. But it'll be just a little bit better. Like for example, it might make stuff like the work of intelligence services harder, right? Because these fucking third-party cookies, here's an idea. They're not only used by Google. These are companies that have to, cooperate with intelligence services that we know spy on all of us. Edward Snowden, we know they have to cooperate with these people and they can't tell you if they do. So, this whole tracking shit is also used for that. And the intelligence services may be interested in who you specifically are. Well, they are. So it would be better if we got rid of all of that. They still have their means, but it might make their life a little bit harder, at least for a while. But I don't think it'll change anything, if at all, a lot of how targeted advertising works. It'll change it like in a technological way, yes, but it won't, like, the effect will be the same. They'll be just putting you in cohorts and they'll be tracking you somehow. That's the whole exercise of this. Google makes billions of dollars each year doing that shit. They're not going to stop. They're not going to be Norway and say, we're completely going to stop. From now on, we just make open source projects and just spend all the money we've made so far. And that'll take us like 100 years. They're not going to do that. So I have a link in the show notes to what the EFF, they have basically an attack on FLoC. I don't agree with everything in there. Some things I think wrong. I think they misunderstood how this works. I think they're overestimating the danger of, like, figuring out things like third parties or anybody like Google figuring out stuff. I think they're right about, like, this sending it out by default is a problem. But they make a very, very, and it's a huge post on the EFF site, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And they make a huge fuss, and they just make one point, and I think they could have just boiled it down to that. The rest is really not as interesting to me, and I agree with them on that. So Google is saying the web can't exist without advertising. So the alternative to third-party cookies should be this new method we designed. That is wrong. The alternative to third-party cookies should be no fucking tracking at all. No profiling, no tracking, no targeted ads. I'm not even saying get rid of all the ads. Ads have worked for hundreds of years without being targeted, right? And I would argue there were better ads, right? The ads I had in my childhood that were on TV, the targeting was very limited, right? They could put them on certain shows, and then they had like demographics kind of somehow of who was watching that. But you knew from back in the day how badly it was targeted sometimes. But they just had better ads. Like, they weren't the fucking shitty Facebook ads that are just targeted to like 100 people, but they're shit. They can't even like English, right? Back in the day, and like even the ads on like the like TV kind of ads that are on YouTube right now, that are targeted at me, they're horrible. And they're horrible for everybody. It's not like my targeting. If I look what, my wife, the ads she gets of friends, they're the same. They're just shitty quality ads. Back in the day, they had fucking jingles in these ads that burned themselves into my brain that I can sing them today. Dahlmeier Prodomo, vollendet veredelter Spitzenkaffee. Frau Bratbecker, das verrückte Huhn ist wieder da. They had all this kind of shit that is indelibly burned into my brain because they were just better ads. Like, I feel like today, a lot of the ads are just a lot more shit. And they're just making up for it by like really, really, really targeting them. But I think if they just, it's kind of like police work. When the police goes, we need to spy on everybody. That makes our job easier. Yeah, fuck, but your job shouldn't be easy. It should be a hard job. You can still do your job. It's going to take you a bit more work. And I feel that's the same for advertising. It's not like advertising has to go away, but you don't need to spy on the whole world to like deliver a good ad. And maybe it's not even targeted. Maybe it's a good ad and it's something I would have never guessed I was interested in. And I watched the ad and I'm like, actually, I think that's a good product. Meanwhile, on fucking YouTube, I get ads. I get like the most... Okay, just quick rant on the side for people who like rants. This is a rant incoming here, right? So the ads, the two latest ads I'm getting on YouTube all the time are an ad for a website where you can buy used cars on the internet. And they're like, hey, look, we have these 3D cameras and we show you the car from all angles and you can sit in it virtually. And then you buy the car and we deliver it to you in this glass truck so you can see your car. Who is so dumb? Who is so idiotic that they would buy a used car without a test drive? What is that shit? What fucking startup? How, like in Germany we say, haben die Lack gesoffen? Have they, were they drinking paint thinner? Haben die Lack gesoffen? Who comes up with an idea like that? Who like, oh yeah, our thing would be like people will buy used cars without having driven them. And now we completely advertise it because in the pandemic everybody's like, I don't care if there's a zombie apocalypse out there and everybody's fucking dying and I won't leave my house, then I'll just not buy a car. I will not buy a used car without having driven it, having looked in it, in the motor. Opening the bonnet, look under the car if there's like oil running out. They're like, no, we all checked, all the cars on our site are perfect. Yeah, sure. Because every used car, I mean, okay. And then the second ad is for a smart home device that you build into your water tap, right? In the actual tap. I think you replace your tap with it, and it has like this ring you can click, and out of the tap will then come either 100 degrees cooking water or cold water. And they're like, hey, this is great. This is the easiest and safest way to have cooking water in your house. And they have like this fucking ad with kids, parents and their kids. And they go like, oh, click, there's cold water. And then you twist it twice and there's cooking. That's the dumbest idea I ever heard. Like, it's very easy to have 100 degrees cooking water to come out of your tap. What could possibly go wrong? Am I the only person who thinks this is a horrible idea? I don't know how they made that secure. They're saying this is very safe. Like, what's wrong with a fucking kettle? If a kettle costs like 15 euros. Like, what is wrong with a fucking kettle? It works. I don't need to have this on my tap where I'm just gonna, I'm like in the morning, I'm tired. Like, I'm really, really tired. And like my muscle memory, there's like these two different clicks I could do, right? And I'm like, oh God, I really need to splash cold water into my face because I'm like fucking messed up and I had a hangover. Click, click. My fucking hands. These are the kind of ads I'm getting. How about, advertising industry, you make some fucking good ads, right? I mean, okay, the product might be shit, but at least make this is shitty ads for shitty products. At least don't show the fucking kids. Like, I see them doing the hot water thing and there's like the kid next to the mom. And I'm like that is like my brain immediately shows me what goes wrong. Like, just don't have the fucking kids in that scene. Who wrote that script? I'm sorry. Yeah, so my bottom line is here. Maybe we don't need fucking tracking. Maybe we don't need fucking targeted ads. Maybe we need some people who can do some good ads. And maybe some good products. Maybe that's the problem here. Anyway, suddenly all of the shitty cars are off the market, offloaded to people that didn't know better and bought them online. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what they're doing with this website. And I think the ads Fab is getting are very well targeted, says Borglit. You mean just look at them. You mean they're well targeted at me providing content? It's like, it's so ridiculous. Like, there's, oh my God, there's like all this shit they could, like, the targeting for advertising is so bad. Like, we're talking YouTube here, yeah, right? I mean, we're talking YouTube, Amazon. These are companies who are apparently, they have all this AI and big data. They could do this. I mean, I'm literally, like, another ad that just occurred to me is like this. So I'm watching like this German YouTuber whose thing is that he rags on companies. He's a Lego YouTuber, originally Held der Steine, but like one of his big things is he talks about how like consultants have destroyed companies and have turned them to shit. And literally, he's talking about this, and I get an ad interruption by some like bad-looking knockoff of Steve Jobs. It's like this young millennial dude who thinks he's Steve Jobs and is wearing this black turtleneck, and then starts talking about how you can become a very successful consultant and help companies do shit. Sometimes I think they have like a hidden camera installed in my room. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Is this actually, are they taking a piss? Is this YouTube algorithm actually messing with me? What the hell? Oh my God. Anyway, that's it for rants. I think I'm with the EFF on this. I think this technology, while it's actually, I think it's actually interesting, and it's very technology wise, it's cool and it's interesting, and it's probably a good solution but it's this typical Silicon Valley thing of like being like too close to the forest. You can't see the forest for the trees or whatever, right? They're just like, it's exactly like contact tracing when I talked about that last year. The solution is good, the technical solution, but the point is, the question you should be asking yourself is not what is the best technical solution to this. The first question is, should we do this? Right? The question is not, how do I make privacy conscious Bluetooth tracking of nearby phones to fight a virus? The first question is do you think phones can be used effectively to map how a virus spreads? The answer is no. I said that last year. It's now obvious it's no. It doesn't do anything. It didn't do fucking anything for the spread of this disease. Didn't do anything against it. It fucking doesn't work because it's a dumb idea, because a virus spreads completely different than Bluetooth signals, which isn't hard to understand. But they didn't even ask that question. And here's the same thing. The question is not, how do we make this tracking, cohort tracking, profiling more privacy conscious? No. The question is, should we do this? And the answer is no. So you can throw your technology away. You can flush your research papers down the toilet, and you can just go home. Because the actual question is, should we do this? And the EFF is right. I mean, they're biased somewhat, and I don't agree with everything the EFF does, but in this case, they're right. The answer is no. Shouldn't have tracking, shouldn't have profiling, just have normal fucking ads, and then maybe don't have ads. Maybe go to actually be supported by the people who are consuming your stuff. That would be an idea, but we'll talk about that later. Before we get into that, before I talk about that, we need to talk about the feedback. And I'm trying to find the button that I use for this segment. I think it's this button. It might be this. Bluetooth is where the virus came from. Oh no, that was 5G. My bad. Yeah, see, this is why I like Twitch chat. This is the really hard-hitting shit. Anyway, let's talk about some feedback. As I always say, I value your feedback. If you have a different view on advertising, if you think this technology is even worse, even better, if you think I misunderstood anything, let me know. Go to privatecitizen.press. Details are on there. The first person who did so recently was Iwan Curry, who sent me some feedback on Ubiquity, which I talked about in the previous episode, where, we have this matrix room, and he used that, which is pretty cool. So Iwan says, I manage my network from the Unify app on my iPhone. And all of a sudden, so he's obviously a Ubiquity user. And all of a sudden, I lost the connection and couldn't see my network at all. I tried logging into the cloud portal from my PC. I could get to my dashboard, but nothing was there. I tried logging in locally, and that failed. So I assumed it was my fault with my UDM. I hard reset and built the network again. Shit. For a time, I was able to access the management interface locally using the cloud credentials, but not via the cloud. And then some days later, it was visible in the cloud again. The comms from Ubiquity was shockingly bad. Basically, it just amounted to a minor breach. Change your password. I like that feedback. So this is what this fuck up we talked about last time looked to its user. Which is very interesting. Yeah, so I think he was saying he's gonna try to get rid of his Ubiquity devices, which sounds like a good choice. Actually, somebody, I don't know who, somebody said I'm always using Ubiquity because of that and that reason. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have. And I don't think that was the message of my podcast at all. I'm not of that episode. I'm not blaming anybody for using their stuff. But maybe you don't. Maybe you want to switch now. Maybe I mean, it could have occurred to you that having that cloud credential login for a router is a bad idea. But then on the other hand, we install routers and put them there because we don't want to deal with them all the time. And, they didn't have that when you bought the device probably. So, and then one thing that's amazing to me, I talk about all these I talk about the pandemic. I talk about, privacy, security, our civil rights, how they're being threatened, how journalism is falling apart, how our politicians are doing all this crazy stuff. And the message I get almost the most feedback on is when I make an offhand comment about Microsoft Office. that just shows you, well, I guess I have to live with it. I guess that's just the way it is. One of these people who took up this topic once more and had some feedback on MS Office was Barry Williams from Down Under, and I edited this a bit. I tend to edit this feedback sometimes. He says, with regard to Office 365, in as far as I recall, there are two options. Anybody can use the web version for free, but if you have a paid subscription for education licenses, etc., you can use the web client or install the desktop version. With the desktop version, you can choose to save on your local PC or OneDrive, which gives you collaboration, etc. When you do save to OneDrive, it will, unless you disable it, save a copy on your local PC. It's kind of like Dropbox. In that case, you can still work on the document if the servers are down, and it will sync when they are back up. I know this because I had a desktop Office license. I just had an Office 2016 or whatever. And I know Office 365 has this. I think you completely misunderstood me. I know you can work with it offline, but why would I have that? What is, if I use the offline version to sync to OneDrive, which the normal, if you just get a license for the Office, normal product, Office 2016 or whatever it is, it does that. Why would I use Office 365? The only Microsoft's reason to use that is because it's in the cloud. Their real reason is because it's a subscription and it's more expensive because you have to pay for it all the time. Whereas if you just buy an Office license, you can use that for years. There are people using that for decades. There are people using Office 2008. That's even worse. What's even the selling point? Why would you do that? Redeemer says, you must be glad, that's Fadi, you must be glad I was busy and lazy and didn't send the feedback about Excel. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to Excel. Anyway, Barry continues. As an IT teacher, I think he, anyway. As an IT teacher, I did look into using an HTML5 slide deck, but the fact that I often need to throw slides together multiple times a week, I've just got used to using the WYSIWYG PowerPoint. And while it would be a great distraction from getting actual work done, to learn a new way, I cannot at this point. I'm sure if I spend some time finding the best way to recreate slides, perhaps with Markdown, I could actually do this quicker. I did have a quick look, but I currently do not have the motivation to do this. Dude, I completely understand. I think what people don't understand is that throwaway comment was about my usage and how I don't see the point. That doesn't mean that applies to you. I understand why people use PowerPoint, right? I still think it's a horrible piece of software. It's being used like in academia. This is hilarious. So I don't know if you're not a scientist or you don't know a scientist. So there's this thing. If you go to a scientific conference, like I'm talking natural sciences here, right? There's often this thing where people present talks. They present their research in talks, and then they have this thing where you don't do a talk, but you do a poster. You basically make a poster with what would be in your talk if you just describe a certain research that you've done. And they have these hallways, and they have posters that tell you about what people are doing in their research. And then usually, the person's next to it, and you can ask them about it, which is pretty cool. They make these things in fucking PowerPoint. 95% of everybody okay, this is probably different if you study informatics or something, but in biology or chemistry or whatever. They make these fucking things in PowerPoint. Posters. They're not a slide deck. PowerPoint's not a publishing software. I mean, you can use it to, it make more sense to do it in Word, and even that would be bad. That's not how you do. Yeah. So PowerPoint's horrible. But I understand why some people use it. I think it's horrible, and I know that there's no really easy to use HTML5 slide software, but there should be. Right? And if not so many people are using PowerPoint, maybe there would be one earlier. Fucking open source developers, stop copying PowerPoint and get on this shit and do something that anybody can use, not just you and I. With regard to not using Excel, now we get to Excel, Fadi. With Astral, yes, with Comic Sans. Some of them use Comic Sans unironically. With regard to not using Excel, I agree Excel's far too much overused. Firstly, you say people are trained in their organization to use Excel. Often they're not trained and just figure it out on the job, and it often goes horribly wrong. It is claimed that 90% of in-production Excel spreadsheets have errors, and there have been several catastrophic ones. I did consider teaching my students data visualization in Python instead of Excel, but somebody actually needs to teach them Excel. However, I will show them that this is an option next time. You misunderstood me again, Barry. When I said they are taught to use Excel, I don't mean like they get taught how to use Excel. I'm saying they get taught to use Excel, right? They're in a company, they start working there. The guy next to them, the boss says, do this. Make me a plan for this. And then the guy goes to the guy sitting next to him, John, how do we do this? And he's like, yeah, we use Excel. And I got this template here, use this, and that's how you do it. I mean, this happened to companies where I was doing research for an article, and I'm sitting in a brainstorming session for for the editors or whatever, and I'm like, so I'm trying to do this, and I need to collect all this data, and somebody goes, yeah, I use Excel. I'm like, what? I was saying you use a proper database. No, we just use Excel for that. And then I actually sat down because I had no idea how to do this. I sat down and can you explain to me how do you do this? And he sat down with me and he explained. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. that's a completely back-assed way to do literally have a collect data on the web, then have a script, convert that into something you can just pipe into Excel and get that converted, and that comes out the other end. And then it was like, what the actual fuck? What are we doing? It's on the web. It's easier for me to set as a Postgres database on the web server. On the server I'm working on, and just feed the data from the web server directly to the database, and then just write a Like I ended up because I can't, I'm not a good programmer. I ended up because I could remember how to do this from a previous job to fucking just write an SQL query to get the data out I wanted. That was fucking easier than their back-assed way to do it like in fucking Excel. I mean, Jesus. So that's what I meant. Like that's a big problem. Like people get taught in companies and university, they get like taught a certain way. Right, and by taught I don't mean explain to them why. It's just like or how. It's just like we do this like that here. That's a big problem in companies. And of course, education is a big problem that you're describing there. Of course, you need to teach your student Excel because everybody they get a job, they need to use Excel. That's exactly the problem. That's the problem. That's why everybody uses Excel for things that it wasn't made for. And I actually think I hate it so much, and it's such a shitty piece of software because, of course, Microsoft does know that, and they need to build the fucking use cases that it shouldn't be used for into the fucking app because people use it for that. They can't just go, no, they're not open source developers. Like, no, I'm not having that. I'm not building that into my software. They just do it after some time. It's like fucking... What 7 says, accountants are the worst about Excel. You can't pry it out of their cold dead hands. Every fucking thing goes through. Yeah, exactly. Last quick anecdote, and then I'm out of here because I need to fucking wrap this up. So when I started being freelancer, I was in this like from my trade organization, like journalists. They do a lot of things for like freelance journalists, right? And to teach them how to do stuff because obviously you have to learn that yourself. You're not going to a company. And I fucking don't know nothing about accounting. I'm like so shit with money. Like that's why my wife does all the taxes and all that shit. But I had to start doing like taxes for my own thing and stuff, and like basically some basic accounting. And I'm sitting in this course where this woman explains to us how to do the fucking accounting for like one person. So basically I'm writing articles. I need to track something like the time I'm spending or like the characters I'm using. I need to set like a price for that. And then I need to write an invoice to, the guy I'm billing for that. Right. And she was explaining how to do this. I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there and she's explaining how to do this whole shit, track all this shit in Excel. I'm like, why would you do that? And then she's like, oh, you built this form. And I actually ended up, in the time I was sitting there, to Google, is there anything? And I actually found a great like piece of software. If anybody wants to, it's called Goodlands. It's like from a small company in Hamburg. It's a subscription service, so I pay like a monthly fee, yes. But like it does exactly what I want. It doesn't only do accounting. It does like work tracking. You just enter the shit into a web form and it creates invoices and it creates all the tax shit. It creates all the forms I need to send to the fucking tax office. It's brilliant. It's probably only usable if you work in Germany, especially the tax stuff. But it's like that's an example. That's like a software that it's tailored for exactly what I want to do. Right? I don't need to get an unwieldy piece of shit software to somehow like write it like a fucking Bronco to kind of somehow get it to do what I want. No, I have software that does exactly what I want. And in that case, it's even not that bad that it's on the cloud, because like if it goes down, yeah, okay, I can't bill somebody for a day. That's not a make or break situation. It's not like I have to write my shit in that. And it's also not that expensive, especially if you consider that it's actually, I can tax deduct that. And it's actually doing that itself. It's actually putting its own bill in its own software, and it puts it all in there, so it automatically tax deducts. It's great. Anyway, yeah. So no, I'm not doing that in fucking Excel. Please also send feedback about other things in future, like maybe this FLoC thing we're talking about. Like let's not. I mean, this is all my preferences. If you like Excel, all right. It's in my eyes, it's a slight strike against your character, but I won't hold it against you that much. But anyway, if you have feedback and if it has to be about Excel, then make it about Excel. Go to privatecitizen.press. It's all on there. Let's just quickly talk about, we talked about why advertising and tracking and cohorts and fucking profiling is bad. Let's talk about why I don't do that on this podcast. Redeemer Fadi actually says we need to move this discussion to Discord. That would be good. So there's a link in the show notes to the Discord server. You can also get on the Matrix room if you prefer that, and we can discuss it there. And that'll be probably a better alternative. That's a good call. But yes, I don't want to do ads on this podcast. I don't want to track you because I think it would be a travesty if I'm doing a podcast that is largely concerned with privacy issues and then I'm fucking tracking you. For some ad money. I don't think advertising works, especially for what I'm doing, right? These kind of niche things, previously like Linux podcast, that's not like, Linux, why there's no advertising on Linux podcasts? Because there's no companies there there's only one company that makes a lot of money that could spend a lot of money on ads, which is Red Hat, which everybody knows, so they don't have to spend money on ads, right? Same as with privacy podcasts, right? That is like the only ads I could get would be for some weird VPN services or whatever. I don't think I want that. So I don't want ads. So my solution here is I firmly believe, and I've believed this for a long time, that good content is worth money and that people will pay for it. I think we are currently in a situation where people are not used to paying for content, which has to do with the history of the internet. And, people like Google who think it's only the only alternative is ads. I don't think that. I think we're actually on the move to a more grassroots-based content production on the internet where more people actually value and are willing to pay. And I actually think the value for value model is a good model for this. So this is something that John C. Dvorak and Adam Curry came up with. And it's basically, I produce this for free. We produce this stuff for free. And then if you can see some value in it, you can think about that and give back whatever you think. It's basically like a tip jar. This presupposes that you can do that, right? You don't have to feel bad if you don't. Yeah, if you can't, because you don't have enough money, or if you don't want to. If you don't want to, don't do it. Don't feel bad about it, right? That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm not iterating this every podcast to just get you to just, support me. That's not the point. The point is that there's always new listeners, and if I can't just I'll have to tell them about it. But I'm trying to make it quick. So I think that's the future. Maybe I'm gonna go down with that sinking ship. But until I see anything better, that's my choice. Currently, I'm using Patreon, which is for me the easiest way. There's a button that doesn't track you. That's actually just an image. That's just a link in the show notes at privatecitizen.press to the Patreon account. The Patreon page, you can create an account there, and then it's like a subscription service. You pick what to pay each month. If you don't want to do that, you can PayPal me money. There's a PayPal address, producers@fab.industries. You can use that. And, I'm looking for other ways. I don't really there's this Apple subscription thing now that they came up with. I'm not sure that's the right fit for me, but, I'm considering everything. And if you think there's another way sending me money that you want me to support, please tell me about it. I mean, I know about Bitcoin, for example, but that's a lot of work. Not so much the getting, but exchanging it, and then Bitcoin's a fucking nightmare tax-wise. If you hold it longer than, I think, what is it, 5 years or 3 years? That's the current German thing. If you hold it longer than that, then you don't have to pay the taxes on it. But that is really not That's not going to help me pay the bills, is it? But, I'm open to suggestions. Use the contact form. There's also anonymous ways to write me on there. PrivateCitizen.press. And I thank everybody who's been supporting the show. And those are the people I need to give some credit to now. So for this show, the people that are keeping it on the air and that I thank profoundly are Georges, Butterbeans, Michael Mullen Jensen, Jonathan M. Hathy, Niall Donegan, Dave, Steve Hose, Shelby Kruver, Vlad, Jackie Plage, One Eye, 11G, Philipp Klostermann, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Kai Sears, IKN, Michael Small, Fadi Mansour, Joe Poser, Dirk Didi, Bennett Piata, Matt Jellyman, David Potter, Larry Glock, Mika, Martin, Dave Amrish, Tobias, Mr. Ramish, Ricky M, Drive Zero, Mode 7, Avis, Jonathan Edwards, Barry Williams, Sandman616, Neil, Captain Egghead, Rizal, D, Iwan Curry, and No Reply. And as you might notice, we're getting more, which makes me happy. This is pretty cool. And a lot of these people have been there for a long time, and I appreciate that a lot. And I would also like to thank my Twitch subscribers because, as I've mentioned before, let me just get a sip of water. Those are a lot of names. As I've mentioned before, I live stream this on Twitch, which is also where you can support me. You can subscribe to the Twitch channel, which if you have Amazon Prime, you can do for free, which you have to renew every month, but still, it's for free to you, and I get the money as if you subscribe normally, which is pretty cool. Thanks, Jeff Bezos. So I'd like to thank those people as well. So the people subscribe to my Twitch channel are Mike_the Dane, Galtaran, Mode 7 is unavailable, Flash Gordo, Centuria Opertus, Indie Gamiacs, Sandman616, Redeemer F, and Butterbeans. So a lot of these people are supporting me in more than one way, which is great. You are the real heroes here. Thanks to everybody. I appreciate this a lot. Also, thanks to Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. And they have been so kind for years to provide the service that the audio files reside on. And that's obviously a huge boon to me, helping me keep this on the road. Redeemer says, I don't remember how to get on to the Matrix room. I can't find it on the contact page on PrivateCitizen.press. Yeah, it's currently not on the contact page. I didn't put it on there because it's a bit experimental, but I'll probably keep it. So I'll put it on the contact page at some point. It's in the feedback section in every episode. At the very bottom, there's like a link to, it says contact me, and then there's an experimental Matrix room. You can go there. And so if you have an account, or you can make an account via that link at matrix.org, and then you can join that room. Which is, I'm trying to provide an alternative that's federated and a bit more privacy conscious. And, God knows what happens if Microsoft buys Discord. So, I think it's safe to have a plan B, and that's the plan B. Right. So I think that's it for this show. As I said, next week, probably not a show on Wednesday. That's my usual release day, but, sometimes that just can't happen. I will put an episode out, though. I will give my best. If I don't, I'll make it up to you later. The promise is an episode a week, and so far I've been able to keep this. So I will stay on that. So don't be, don't be alarmed if the episode takes a bit longer or something. You have been warned. And let's wrap this up. So the theme song to this show is called Acoustic Roots by Raoul Kabazali, who I like to give credit because it's an amazing song. And then also the ending song for this episode today is called Walk Ahead by Blood Red Sun. And with that, I think I'll wrap it up and get out of here. And see you soon. And until then, aim to misbehave. And remember, I'm always here for you. I'm always defending your right to have something to hide. See you next week. I'm pretty sure it's going to be next week. So see you next week.
denied your civil rights. You demand that I eternize your name. Walk ahead. You cover us in shame and I take the blame. Living by the rules to which high school blues. Walk ahead. Keep provoking. Blood red sun starts choking. Can anyone stand this nonsense? Eating away, telling us to stop and obey. To stop and obey. Now rats can shine. Jokers got silver lining. Holy Mary sings songs in the wet rain. Walk ahead. Now every new day's a new firearm to my teeth. Call me a liar. Building as you rip. Someone show me someone living a desire.
Rightio, that's a pretty nice song, I thought. As I just said in chat, I like to pick the good stuff from Epidemic Sound, which is sometimes a challenge, but they have some cool stuff. Anyway, I will now finish this podcast, but I'll do that offline because I also have some other stuff to do. I don't know when I'm going to stream again, to be honest. Please keep an eye on, I have this handy website, Fab Industries. Oh God, I can't use my keyboard right now. There's too much stuff on the desk. /stream. You can see the not real start date here today, but I'll let you know when I can. I probably won't be streaming this week or the next. I might not even stream the next Private Citizen episode because I got some shit to do. I'm gonna have to put my head in the sand for a bit and do some writing. So I won't be reachable probably as well. But yeah, so I'll let you know as soon as I can. Also in Discord and in the Matrix stuff. Right, so I'm out of here. I'm finished this podcast. I would like to rate you to a good friend of mine, ex-colleague Ever7. He's a German streamer, so if you don't speak German, probably not going to be that interesting, but maybe some of you do. He's currently doing iRacing, which is amazing, which is something I never could do. That's like a racing game where you fucking... it's a subscription service, and it's like totally in depth, and he's got this amazing setup, like with three screens and everything. And also he's doing the Nordschleife right now, which is Nürburgring Nordschleife, which is of course atrocious because as we know from the Grand Tour, it's the reason that so many cars are shit, because they were designed on the Nordschleife. But anyway, let's jump over to Ava. If you're staying with me, I thank you for that, and say hello from Fab. And I'll see you soon. I'll try to be back with streaming. On what scale are we supposed to rate him? Dana, sorry, I didn't see you there. Rate him on a scale from 1 to Fab. How about that? Yeah, so I'll try to get us back to streaming as soon as I can. All right, that's the only thing I can promise. This is the life of a freelancer. Sometimes some things you just can't plan. Anyway, see you until then. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot. And yeah, please say hello from Fab, and rate Eva on a scale from 1 to Fab. Where's this damn button I'm looking at? Is it this? Yes, this button. Okay. Thanks for watching, and see you soon, I hope. Goodbye.